unaware of the storm brewing beneath their roof. Stacy decided it was time to confront Dorothy directly. She approached her mother-in-law one afternoon while she was in the kitchen. "Dorothy, can we talk?" Stacy began, her voice steady but cautious. Dorothy glanced at her, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. "About what?" she replied tersely. Stacy felt her heart race but pressed on. "I overheard you on the phone the other night. It sounded serious, and I'm worried about you." Dorothy's expression hardened, and for a moment, Stacy feared she had made a mistake. "You have no idea what you're talking about," Dorothy snapped, turning her back to Stacy. But Stacy wouldn't back down. "I do care, Dorothy. I want to help you," she insisted. The tension in the room crackled as they faced off, each woman standing her ground. Finally, Dorothy turned to her, eyes narrowing. "Help? You think you can help me? You're just a child in a woman's body pretending to know how the world works," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. Stacy felt her heart sink, but refused to let Dorothy's words hurt her. She had to stand up for herself and her family. "This isn't just about you, it's about all of us," Stacy shot back, feeling a surge of defiance. But deep down, she felt the fear creeping back in. What if Dorothy truly was beyond help? The days dragged on, and the tension in the house became unbearable. Tom continued to distance himself, spending more time at the casino while Dorothy retreated into her own world of secrets. Stacy felt like a prisoner in her own home, constantly on edge and unsure of what to expect. One evening, after another fight with Tom about his gambling, Stacy decided to take action. She couldn't sit back any longer. She needed answers. With her heart pounding, she resolved to follow Dorothy. As night fell, Stacy quietly slipped out of the house and trailed her mother-in-law through the dimly lit streets. She kept her distance, careful not to be seen, her mind racing with questions. Where was Dorothy going? What was she up to? Stacy's instincts screamed that something was not right. They arrived at a rundown bar on the edge of town, a place that sent chills down Stacy's spine. The sign flickered ominously, and she hesitated at the entrance, fear gripping her. But she had to know. Gathering her courage, she stepped inside and scanned the room. The atmosphere was thick with smoke and laughter, but one table in the back caught her eye. Dorothy sat with a man Stacy didn't recognize, and their conversation was hushed but intense. Stacy felt a wave of dread wash over her. This was the moment she had feared. Stacy edged closer, trying to catch snippets of their conversation. The man leaned in, his voice low and conspiratorial. "You know what you need to do, right? We can't let them take everything we've worked for," he urged. Dorothy nodded, her expression serious, and Stacy's heart sank. What did they mean by taking everything? The words hung in the air like a dark omen. Stacy's mind raced with possibilities. Was Dorothy planning something illegal? Was this all about money? The thought made her stomach churn. She felt a mix of fear and anger boiling inside her. How could her mother-in-law be involved in something so nefarious? She turned to leave, needing to regroup and process what she had just witnessed. But before she could escape, a loud crash echoed through the bar, drawing her attention back to Dorothy. The man stood up abruptly, his face contorted with rage. "You think you can just walk away? We're in this together," he shouted, causing heads to turn. Stacy's heart raced as she ducked behind a booth, adrenaline surging through her veins. What was happening? Did Tom know about this? She felt a sense of urgency to get back home and confront both Tom and Dorothy. They needed to come clean before the situation spiraled completely out of control. Stacy hurried home, her mind racing with the shocking revelations she had just witnessed. As she entered the house, she found Tom sprawled on the couch, a look of defeat on his face. He barely acknowledged her presence. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he muttered, his voice heavy with fatigue. Stacy hesitated, unsure of how to approach the conversation. Should she tell him about Dorothy's secret meeting or focus on his own struggles? Finally, she decided to lay everything on the table. "Tom, we need to talk about your mother," she said, her voice firm yet trembling with anxiety. His expression shifted from indifference to concern. "What about her?" he asked, sitting up straighter. Taking a deep breath, Stacy revealed what she had seen at the bar. "I followed her last night. She was meeting with a man, and they were discussing something that sounded serious, something about not letting them take everything." Tom's face paled, and he ran a hand through his hair in disbelief. "What do you mean?" What were they planning? Stacy always considered herself the glue that held her family together. Growing up in a chaotic household, where her parents often fought, she learned to navigate through storms early on. Now, as an adult, she faced a tempest of her own. Her mother-in-law, Dorothy, had moved in unexpectedly after the recent passing of Stacy's mother. The loss was still fresh, and the added tension of Dorothy's presence felt overwhelming. Stacy's husband, Tom, seemed distant, wrapped up in his grief and unwilling to discuss their future. Every day felt like walking through a minefield, as Stacy juggled her responsibilities at work with the demands of her home life. She desperately wanted to support Tom, but his silence only intensified her feelings of isolation. As days turned into weeks, the atmosphere in their home grew heavy. Stacy often found herself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. The couple had once shared dreams of a bright future, but now those dreams felt like distant memories. Tom's gambling habits had resurfaced, and it seemed he was choosing to escape through the casino rather than face the realities of their lives. As Stacy sat alone in the dark, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking beneath the surface, ready to erupt at any moment. One evening, after returning home from a long day at work, Stacy found Tom in a heated argument with Dorothy. The words they exchanged cut through the air like daggers, filled with accusations and blame. "You don't know what it's like to be a man in this house," Tom shouted, his face flushed with anger. Dorothy shot back, "And you don't know what it means to take responsibility." Stacy felt her heart race as she stood frozen in the doorway. This was no ordinary argument. It was a clash of wills, and she was caught in the middle. She wanted to intervene to calm them down, but the hostility was palpable. Instead, she quietly retreated to the kitchen, where she could hear their voices rising and falling like a chaotic symphony. As she poured herself a glass of water, Stacy's mind raced. How had it come to this? The woman who had once welcomed her into the family was now at odds with her husband. Each insult felt like a personal attack, making Stacy feel more powerless than ever. She took a deep breath, hoping that tomorrow would bring a chance to mend the rift that was tearing her family apart. Little did she know, that night would mark the beginning of an unraveling she could never have anticipated. The following day, Stacy attempted to mediate between Tom and Dorothy, hoping to restore some semblance of peace in their home. She approached Tom with a gentle touch, trying to draw him out of his shell. "Can we talk about what happened last night?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with concern. Tom looked away, his eyes filled with anger and shame. "What's there to talk about?" "Mom just doesn't understand what I'm going through," he muttered, avoiding her gaze. Frustrated, Stacy turned to Dorothy, hoping for a more receptive response. "Dorothy, I think we need to find a way to communicate better. This tension isn't helping anyone," she suggested, but Dorothy's face hardened, her defensive walls going up. "He's just using you as a shield. I've seen it before," she snapped. Stacy felt the sting of those words. She wasn't just a buffer, she was trying to help. As the day dragged on, Stacy felt the chasm between them grow wider. Despite her best efforts, nothing seemed to bridge the gap. Tom returned to his gambling, and Dorothy withdrew into her room, leaving Stacy feeling like a ghost in her own home. The isolation grew, and as night fell, Stacy's mind raced with worry. The stakes were higher than she realized, and the stakes would soon take a dark turn. One sleepless night, Stacy found herself sitting on the porch, trying to clear her mind. The air was cool, and the stars twinkled above, offering a sense of calm that eluded her inside. But as she stared into the darkness, her thoughts spiraled. That's when she heard Dorothy on the phone, speaking in hushed tones just inside the house. "He'll never know what hit him," Dorothy whispered, her voice low and conspiratorial. Stacy's heart raced, a wave of dread washing over her. What was her mother-in-law planning? Stacy strained to hear more, but Dorothy's words were muffled. She felt a surge of anger. How could Dorothy involve her family in something so secretive? The trust she had once felt began to erode, replaced by an unsettling sense of paranoia. What if Dorothy was plotting against Tom? Stacy knew she needed to confront Dorothy, but the fear of what she might uncover paralyzed her. Instead, she went inside, feeling like she was being drawn into a dark and dangerous game. As the days passed, the whispers haunted her, refusing to let her sleep. Each time she looked at Tom, she felt the weight of the secrets he carried. Stacy could see the wheels turning in his mind, and she felt a mix of fear and determination. "I don't know for sure, but it sounded like they were involved in something illegal," she confessed, her heart racing. Tom stood up abruptly, pacing the room as he processed the news. "My mother has always been manipulative, but this is different. I need to confront her," he said, the resolve in his voice giving Stacy hope. They could no longer ignore the danger lurking within their home. It was time to face it head-on, no matter how painful it would be. Stacy and Tom gathered their courage and approached Dorothy together. They found her in the living room, sitting with an air of calm that felt unsettling. "We need to talk," Tom said, his voice steady yet laced with tension. Dorothy looked up, feigning innocence. "About what?" she asked, but her eyes narrowed, revealing her defensiveness. Stacy exchanged glances with Tom, silently encouraging him to take the lead. "We know about your meeting with that man," he said bluntly, not holding back any emotion. "What are you involved in, Mom?" The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. Dorothy's expression shifted from feigned ignorance to irritation. "You have no idea what you're talking about," she snapped, but Tom pressed on. "I saw you, Dorothy. You're not the only one who knows how to keep secrets." The confrontation escalated quickly, Dorothy's face turning red with anger. "You don't understand the situation. I'm trying to protect our family," she shouted, her voice echoing off the walls. Stacy felt the tension crackle in the air, unsure whether this was a desperate plea for help or a thinly veiled threat. It became clear that Dorothy was hiding something, and as Stacy stood beside Tom, she knew they had to dig deeper. This confrontation was only the beginning, and the truth was still shrouded in darkness. As the argument intensified, Stacy realized they were getting nowhere. "We need to find out the truth together," she finally interjected, trying to defuse the situation. "Mom, if you're in trouble, we want to help, but you have to be honest with us." The anger in Dorothy's eyes flickered, replaced by something more vulnerable. "Help? You think I need help from a child?" She scoffed, but there was a hint of hesitation in her tone. "You're right. I've been hiding things, but it's for your own good," she admitted reluctantly. Stacy's heart raced. Could this be the breakthrough they needed? "Then tell us the truth. What are you involved in?" Tom urged, his voice firm. Finally, with a heavy sigh, Dorothy began to reveal the tangled web she had woven. "After your father died, I made some risky investments to secure our future, but they went south. I owe a lot of money to some dangerous people, and I didn't want either of you to worry," she confessed, her voice trembling. Stacy felt a mix of relief and dread. This was the truth they had sought, but it came with heavy implications. The family was now caught in a financial crisis, and they needed a plan to navigate the dangers ahead. The shadows of deceit were closing in, but they still had a chance to confront them together. The revelation changed everything. Stacy and Tom were no longer just dealing with their own problems. They were now entangled in Dorothy's mess. "What do we do now?" Stacy asked, her mind racing with possibilities. Tom looked at his mother, his expression softening. "We need to come up with a plan. We can't let them take everything from us," he said, determination flooding his voice. Dorothy nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't want you to know, but now we have to face this head-on. I've made some mistakes, but we can fix this together," she pleaded. The family had to unite against a common enemy: the looming threat of financial ruin and the dangerous people pursuing Dorothy. They spent the night brainstorming ways to address the situation. Stacy suggested reaching out to a financial advisor, someone who could help them navigate the crisis without drawing too much attention. Tom agreed, and together they mapped out a plan to confront the debts. But as the hours ticked by, an unsettling feeling lingered in the back of Stacy's mind. Were they really safe? The stakes were high, and the dangers were far from over. With their plan in place, the family felt a glimmer of hope as they faced the challenges ahead. They contacted a financial advisor who agreed to meet with them the following week. But just as they began to feel a sense of control, the phone rang late one night. It was a number they didn't recognize. Tom hesitated, but eventually picked up, his expression darkening as he listened. "What do you mean you're coming to collect?" he demanded, his voice trembling with fear. Stacy felt her heart drop. The threats were becoming real. Tom slammed the phone down, his face pale. "They know we're trying to escape, and they're not going to wait," he said, panic rising in his voice. Stacy grabbed his arm, grounding him. "We need to stay calm. We'll figure this out together," she assured him, but her own heart raced with anxiety. The threat of violence loomed over them like a dark cloud, and they had to act fast. As they strategized their next moves, the weight of the secrets and lies they had uncovered pressed down heavily on their shoulders. Their fight for survival had just begun, and Stacy knew they would need every ounce of strength to face the shadows of deceit that threatened to engulf them.